I'll begin with the question of detainees held by the ANC and provide all of you with a bit of background. I don't want to go into details. I said earlier that the Pretoria regime and ourselves have been locked in a bitter and bloody warfare. Certainly Pretoria has imprisoned not just a few hundreds but thousands of us on Robben Island, Paulsmoor, and other prisons. Secondly, Pretoria has executed some of our captured comrades, Solomon Mahlangu, Mkhwerane, Musolodi, Mtaung, and they have sentenced to life imprisonment. Thirdly, Pretoria has sent murder squads across the borders of South Africa to eliminate us. I said yesterday, or day before yesterday, that I was one of the victims of the murder squads on more than one occasion. Gabi certainly was eliminated by them in Harare, and so many of our people have been killed in Gaborone, in Swaziland, in Mozambique, in Lesotho, and many other centers. In that war, Pretoria has been sending scores and scores of agents to kill and poison us in the camps. We have intercepted and caught some of those agents. Dirk Coetzee, whose credibility, despite what the Harms Commission said, has been accepted by Justice Kriegler, that for years Pretoria has maintained a place called Flag Plus, which was a center for secret operations against us, and the activities included poisoning of ANC members. We had to defend ourselves to survive. We arrested people, including Olivia Forsyth, who is a confessed agent of the regime. There were many others who confessed. We had to keep them somewhere, and they were kept in a camp in northern Angola. That camp is no longer there since we moved from Angola. Over the last few years, we have been releasing many of these people. Some are studying and they have been reintegrated in our movement. They have been pardoned by us. Twala and the so-called dissidents who came back from South Africa were also released and sent to Tanzania. They fled to Kenya. That's why they came back to South Africa about a year ago. We are in the process. As soon as the necessary logistics are organized to release those people, and we shall give them an option either to remain with us abroad or come back to South Africa. We shall certainly not prevent a single one of them from coming back to South Africa if those people so desire. Coming to the question of Pungula, he came back with a group and went to the Transkei and was killed in the Transkei. That killing was not organized by the African National Congress. Of all those dissidents, he's the only one who has been killed so far. But he was not killed on the instructions of the ANC as an organization. We made a public statement on this issue. And I don't think it is fair to blame us for the killing of Sipho Pungula in the Transkei. The Transkei government carried out its own investigations. I don't know the outcome of those investigations. And it was willing to discuss this issue with the South African regime. So all I can say is that we cannot be held responsible for the killing of Pungula.
Question over here.
Peter Hammond, Frontline Fellowship. Mr. Hani, for years ANC has claimed to represent the vast majority of black South Africans, yet despite the massive international media coverage on the foreign funding, substantial foreign funding you receive and the aggressive membership drive this last year, according to press reports, the ANC has failed to sign up more than 200,000 members, yet the Inkatha Freedom Party of Dr. Mangosuthu Buthelezi has over 2.2 million paid-up card-carrying members. How then can the ANC continue to claim to represent the majority of what is in reality not even 1% of the people of South Africa? And secondly, as your organization has publicly allied itself with American foes such as dictators Castro, Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi, Why then should American taxpayers contribute tax dollars to your organization, which is involved in violence?
Well, I think the comparison is very unfair. Inkatha has been operating openly, I don't know for how many years, unharassed and unpersecuted by the state. In fact, the leader of Inkatha Freedom Party is the chief minister in a homeland created by Pretoria. The resources of that homeland are at his disposal. He has got offices in Ulundi. He gets his salary from the South African government. Most of his ministers are paid by the South African government. They have never been arrested, persecuted, or banned, banished, or exiled like ourselves. Unlike Mandela, he has enjoyed all the space to mobilize. Mandela, until last year, was in prison for 27 years. All the senior leadership of the ANC, for information, has never been able until last year to come back and build an organization inside South Africa. So I think the comparison is rather unfortunate. Inkatha is a sweetheart organization, loved by Pretoria and not harassed at all. And they have never been involved in a struggle, in my own memory, against the South African government. They are like a church, as far as I'm concerned, which goes every day unmolested to preach the word of God. They preach the word of freedom without taking any action to ensure that freedom comes about. Then moving from there, I think your statistics are rather outdated. The ANC so far has got more than 500,000 members, and there's a drive to recruit more members into the ANC. I think that's an achievement, considering that we started building the ANC seriously in August last year. Yes, we're unbanned in February. But then you have got to build a core of leaders. They had just come out of prison. Others were abroad. We had to set interim structures. You must remember, we're an underground movement. An underground movement has got to be very, very small to survive. Now we're building a mass movement. And for us to have reached all the parts of South Africa in 8 months is an amazing achievement. You know, the membership in the Transkei alone is close to 30,000 within 8 months. Inkatha has had, I don't know when it was formed, but I think it has had more than 10 years to build itself, openly and unharassed. And why does the world expect us within 8 months to have, 2 million or 2.2 million paid up membership? But your own papers in South Africa, at any rate, I think Mr. Bob and others will agree, there have been polls to show that more South Africans, especially blacks, support the ANC, more than 42%, and only 6% support Inkatha. Those are not Mandela's polls or the polls of Maibuye or the African communists, but bourgeois papers like the Star and others. Even Ken Owen, who doesn't like us, agrees that we enjoy majority support. Now, I think there is no doubt that we are a mass national movement. We're not a Natal-based or a Cape-based organization. We have got membership throughout the country, amongst all Africans, Zulus, Xhosa, Tswanas, amongst Indians, people of Asian origin, mixed race, and also amongst whites. There might be few whites in the ANC, but they are there. We are working closely. We are in alliance with a massive trade union federation, which supports the broad outlines of, broad policies of the movement. That is COSATU. Coming to a question, how can the ANC, if it associates and works with what you call dictators, Fidel Castro, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi? You know, the ANC is involved in a very serious struggle to overthrow apartheid. In that struggle, it needs the support of the international community. The people you call dictators have helped us with training. Poor Cuba has helped us in training our people and has provided equipment. It has given us scholarship to our students to study in Havana and other cities. Why should we reject that assistance? When the Americans were not so forthcoming in terms of training us and giving us anything at that time, the American government. Gaddafi has done the same thing to us, not only us, but the PAC, training and funding us as well. Those who suffer can't afford the luxury of not accepting assistance from those who are willing to support us. The Americans must look back into their own history. You did not hesitate to work with Stalin against Hitler. You were sending shipments of food and material via Murmansk and other ports in the Soviet Union in order to fight Hitler. Why should it be reprehensible on the part of the ANC to do the same? To have alliances so that it wages a successful struggle? I think we are unfair to the African National Congress. And I think the American taxpayers must not support us on the basis of choosing friends for us. I think you must respect our decisions to have our own friends. Please don't dictate to us. We must decide who our friends are. I think it's a bit of arrogance to tell us with whom we should associate. I mean, that's really patronizing, and I think the ANC doesn't like that.
Question right here.
Dirk Swart, die Burger, Cape Town. Which economic program do you suggest for South Africa? I got the impression yesterday that you depended on the communist program to execute the redistribution of wealth, which you would like to see. Is that right?
Well, I'm happy to meet you. I have got a Cape Townian background as well. I grew up in Stellenbosch and I enjoyed my stay there for a long time. Which economic program? Well, I think South Africans are discussing which is the best economic program to implement in a post-apartheid South Africa. Even non-Marxists are agreed that something has got to be done about the redistribution of wealth in our country. I know at any rate, I know that Professor Sampieter Blanche of Stellenbosch, who for a long time was a member of the Nationalist Party, I don't know if he still is, also agrees that in addressing the imbalances in our country, something has got to be done, something drastic. You know, we want to bring about social harmony in our country. And that social harmony is impossible if we do not redistribute wealth and resources. I'm not referring to vulgar equalization. All I'm saying is that every person in South Africa, at least we should try, that should be our objective, should have at least 3 meals a day, should have shelter, not the squatters' shacks, no compounds. Every child must have access to proper schools. We must have the same medical facilities. How do we do that? I don't think we South Africans must look for models. But I think we have got a duty, if we have got to stop the current divisions, if we have got to heal the wounds of apartheid divisions, to balance things. Now, you are an Afrikaner. You have got your own history. You are part of the important national groups in our country. At one time, you were disadvantaged, sir. The British treated you as a second-class citizen. You were not given, your language was not given the same status as English. You were an ordinary farmer in the 30s and 40s and very poor, most of you. We are exactly in the same position as blacks. You know, I went back where I was born, where my mother is, as soon as I got into the country. She stays in only one hut. When I had to sleep there, she had to negotiate with neighbors to provide her newly arrived son with some shelter. I'm just using me as an example. Most of us are in that position, most blacks, in the rural areas and in the townships. Now, apartheid has decided not to provide housing for us. Now, you nationalized. It's only now that you are speaking about privatization. You nationalized ESCOM, ISCO, SETS. You worked out affirmative programs to uplift the Afrikaner. You helped them with heavy subsidies to buy farms so that they should have land. The ANC says, equally, emerging out of a disastrous situation which has impoverished millions, the state must intervene. We cannot leave it to private enterprise to try to distribute resources. And certainly we want to nationalize enterprises like ESCOM, ISCO, SETS. But at the same time, we say we are for a mixed economy. And in doing so, we must also take into consideration not to repeat the mistakes of Eastern Europe and Africa. I think we're all agreed about economic growth so that more jobs should be there. And I'm sure when we nationalize, we shall take that into consideration. But essential services, those things which are needed by the people, like postal services, transport, electricity, a government must ensure that Mr. and Mrs. Average also get a slice of the cake. But we shall allow private enterprise to continue in our country. We shall continue to accept foreign investment. But of course, every government sits down to draw guidelines so that in the final analysis, the operations of conglomerates like Anglo-American, for instance, has committed a crime against our people. I'm sure you have been to the compounds. Despite, the accumulation of profits, the housing they have built for our people is not fit for animals. And the conditions, discriminatory conditions and labor practices are terrible. We as a government must ensure, we must set up guidelines for the operations of private enterprise as well as multinational corporations. Yes, profits will be allowed to be taken out, but at the same time, they've got an obligation towards the social upliftment of those who are participating in the operations of their companies. I think this is only, people say that nationalization has not worked anywhere. We don't have that history. We know that the British after the war nationalized, I'm sure the French as well. There's a bit of nationalization in the Scandinavian countries as well. Our nationalization, in fact, is guided by a concern to bring about social justice. Our capitalism, I said so when I was speaking yesterday, has never demonstrated a social conscience. I don't know the situation in other countries. That's why, as I say, we are for a mixed economy. But again, I want to assure whites in South Africa, we have no intentions to nationalize private property. They will remain in their houses. Some people are so simplistic. They think that next time there's an ANC government, we are going to be rushing to grab people's cars. We are going to be grabbing people's houses. In our constitutional guidelines, we are emphatic that private property is private property, and every South African will retain his or her private property. And I think this assurance should be satisfying to those who possess houses, beautiful cars, and that sort of thing. We are only concerned about the commanding heights of our economy.
Hang on, let's get it here and first.
I wondered if you could comment for me on the relationship between the ANC and the Pan-Africanist Congress and the importance of progressive whites in South Africa as well as the United States to respect the range of leadership in Azania.
Thanks. Well, after years of differences between the PAC and the ANC, I don't want to go into that history. But the leadership of both organizations have recognized the vital necessity to build a united front. We had a number of meetings within South Africa, and those meetings resulted in a major meeting in Harare, which was an outstanding success in our view. We defined areas of common agreement. The PAC and the ANC are agreed on a constituent assembly. We are agreed that this government has no right to rule us. There's a need for democratic elections so that a new democratic government should emerge in our country. We're having now a very important meeting in August to discuss questions of strategy and tactics. You have referred to progressive whites in our country. As you know, we're a non-racial organization. in the leadership of the ANC at different levels. We've got all sorts of people. In the national executive of the ANC, we have the men some whites don't like, Joe Slovo. We have Ronnie Castrels. At a number of levels, I've got people like Raymond Satner, Albisex, so on and so forth, because I think we're the only truly non-racial political organization. Well, I think President de Klerk is learning very fast from us. He's opening the Nationalist Party doors as well. But we started this process years ago. But we're proud that now other parties are following suit. We are very much keen that our South African white counterparts, or compatriots rather, should be inside the ANC, because the future of our country lies in non-racialism, in building a real non-racial country, where we should forget about the color of a person's skin. We believe, for instance, we should cultivate these things right from school, primary schools, nursery schools, and in a small way, grudgingly perhaps, some schools are being reopened. And I think, you see, this is commendable, to break the racial divide, for South Africans to be together and talk to one another, because this has not happened for many, many years. Nobody should feel threatened in our country. You know, before, there would be the white areas, white suburbs, in convenient places. There would be the townships 30 kilometers from the city. You know, in order to get to town from Orlando, in Soweto where I stay, I've got to make sure that at least 30 minutes are spent, you know, commuting between Orlando and Johannesburg. Surely we want to bring that to an end. And that is not going to happen by, you know, and forcing people to move into the suburbs. So we've got to build more houses. We've got to encourage people. We're not going to legislate, you see, for a mechanical mixing of people. Because what is important is education and reorientation of the people of South Africa, in order to, so that they accept themselves, they look upon themselves as people of South Africa, not as white, black, Indian, or colored. I think that is the major task facing all of us, to build a contented, united, non-racial society.
Question here.
David Brown of the Johannesburg Star, the newspaper you described as bourgeois. The ANC and the others, it's well known, are pretty disgruntled with the South African media. Could you say what the nature of the complaint is and what the ANC government or dominated government would like to do about it in the post-apartheid South Africa? And secondly, if I may ask, did the administration in your talks yesterday show any sign of flexibility or sympathy towards your view on sanctions, or are they going to go ahead?
Well, I think the word disgruntled is rather too strong. I think we've criticized the press, but equally I want to say, and I said this in an interview with New Era in Cape Town, that the press has an important role to play in society. They've got to inform the people about what is happening. They've got to critically assess the ANC, Nationalist Party, Inkatha, and all players in the South African situation. We don't want a press which is going to indulge in acts of adulation, saying what a great leader Mandela is. I don't think that sort of sycophantic press is useful. But I think sometimes the press has been rough with us. One day, I was in Cape Town and I read an editorial in the Cape Times which said, Hani and Malan. And the first sentence was rather unfair, which said the highly ambitious Hani is being helped by the outbursts of Malan. Well, unfortunately, I've never met the editor. And I don't know why he should use that epithet when he's describing me. But I suppose that that's the prerogative of the press, to say whether you have got a big nose or a big head, even if you don't have it. we believe that they have not treated us sympathetically. Even over the years, this is history. You must remember that invariably the press sided with the government and with all the pernicious legislation for a long time against us. You regarded us generally as terrorists, as bloody people. When you were attacked in Lesotho and Mozambique, you said to Malan and his troops, well done, our boys have knocked them out. They will never be able to continue again. They have been hit for a six. You never treated us as individuals, as human beings who had a noble cause. But there were exceptions. I think I don't want to generalize too much. But I think that was the view. For instance, some of you are predicting a doomsday that South Africa will be a real wasteland if the ANC rules that country. And you don't say that South Africa has been reduced to its present position by the Nationalist Party government. You don't treat us sympathetically when we cry and say that we see we're being killed, we're being attacked. You think we're behaving like spoiled brats. In fact, people like Ken Owen are actually enjoying attacking us every weekend. Ken Owen on Sunday, I think most of the time is 2/3 of what he says is a tirade against the African National Congress. We don't want to see a situation where we feel that the press doesn't like us, because that situation generates negative attitudes on the part of the ANC, and I don't think that is helpful. I think there should be a balanced and objective assessment of the ANC, in the same way as I think we are objective about the government. Very few papers, there are papers you see, would describe Malan in the way sometimes I'm described, in the way sometimes Paulo Jordan is described, or in the way that Slovo is described. We are projected, as people who are not reasonable. For instance, where does the press get the view that the demands made by the ANC are as a result of the hawks in the ANC? You don't see the ANC sitting down like an organization discussing openly and at the end taking a collective decision as a result of openness. That was a decision taken as a result of a consensus. But again, the whipping boys, Jordan, Slovo, Hani, pressurizing Mandela to write an open letter to de Klerk. All personal, I'm appealing, and I'm not prescribing, to the press. We need the press, it should inform us as much as possible. The press, for instance, I don't like, for instance, today I was reading a press transcript from home, which says Inkatha, which is largely Zulu, and the ANC, which is largely supported by the Xhosas. That is not true again. The ANC is supported by all the national groups, all blacks in South Africa. And if you go to statistics, you'll find that probably 70%, 70% Xhosa, 65% Sotho, 55% Tswana. The latest statistics say that 58% of Zulus support the ANC. And you are projecting an image that the ANC is a tribal organization. When we eschewed tribalism years ago, for a long time there was not a single Xhosa president of the ANC. It was Luthuli, it was Dube, it was Josiah Gumede, it was Makgato. So we don't understand why are we being described, for instance, as a Xhosa organization, except that the perception should be, well, Inkatha is Zulu and Xhosa, and the ANC is Xhosa, and that is totally untrue. So I'm just citing a few examples which cause us unhappiness, not disgruntlement. I don't think we're disgruntled.
We've got time for about one more question in the back.